morning, CenterPoint Church. We are glad that you're here again today with us to celebrate Mother's Day. What a great occasion that is. And we all have moms, and so it's great to celebrate them on this day. And I realize that today may not be a great day for some people because maybe their moms have passed away or whatever the occasion might be. You lost a loved one on Mother's Day. Those are tough times. But today we are actually celebrating Mother's Day and celebrate the memory of Mother, even if she's not around, okay? We want you to do that with us today, okay? It's going to be a great time. I heard about a drill sergeant that was a little frustrated in his efforts to make a soldier out of a certain recruit. And the trainee kind of lagged behind in the marches, and he used any excuse to go to sick call, to grumble constantly about the food, and he never made his cot properly. But one day, a noticeable change took place in that young man's attitude. And when they asked what attributed to the soldier's change in his attitude, the drill sergeant explained, well, threats, and punishment, they just didn't work. So I had to resort to the ultimate weapon, and that was I called his mother. That'll do it every time. But we're not here today to preach to mothers. We want to praise mothers. We're here today to honor mothers on Mother's Day. Paul said in Romans chapter 13, verse number 6, to give honor to whom honor is due. And honor is most certainly due to mothers. And most of this honor may be well overdue or even past due today. But my mom has always been an encouragement to me in everything that I've ever done. And I used to show up, she'd show up and she'd watch me run track events. She encouraged me in my singing, when I was younger. Actually, she kind of made me sing when I was in church at a young age. But it developed a talent that I had there. And it was all because of her interest in me and pouring herself into me, which is what moms do all the time, that I became the man that I am today. But I went off to college, I flew halfway around the world all by myself because, as most of you know, I grew up in Australia. And so we had to fly to get back to the States. And so when I went back to college, I actually flew back to the United States from Australia all the way halfway around the world all by myself at the age of 17 or 18, I believe it was at that time. But I got on that plane, and as we went to the gate, I remember my parents were standing there, and we hugged and kissed, and hugged mom, and we kind of turned, and it was kind of a tense moment, and tears began to flow, and as I walked through with my bags and got to the other side, and we turned and we waved, and then all of a sudden I got to the walkway, walked onto the plane, and I sat down, and I was like, thank God they're gone. No, I'm teasing. I didn't say that at all. It was an emotional time for me. It was a time that I missed my parents, and we're talking about moms today, so I really missed my mom. But seriously, I knew my mom loved me, and I knew my dad did too, obviously. But we're not talking about dads today because it's not Father's Day. We're talking about moms. But at 19, after I'd been in college for a year, I came back home because I tore my ACL, and I couldn't work anymore. So when I got home, I had to take time to heal up, and I started to save up at a job that I took. And I decided I was going to honor my mom one night, and I took her out to downtown Sydney to a dinner and a Broadway-style show. She probably still remembers this, but I could tell that night meant a lot to her. She was in awe, and it was one of the best memories that I had, that I got to honor my mom on Mother's Day. And I trust that you're doing kind of the same thing, whatever it may be with your mothers, that you are honoring them today especially. You ought to honor them all year long, but especially honor them today on Mother's Day. She works tirelessly. My wife has given me a great bunch of kids also, and they're her mother, but you know what? She's the mother of my children, and she works tirelessly to raise our kids and to love Jesus. And I know that she pours her heart into my kids. She pours her heart into ministry. She pours her heart into loving me, which is hard sometimes. I know that's tough for you to believe, but it's true. And I know that she loves kids. She helps others raise their kids today. And that's the kind of mother that she is. She works tirelessly doing that. But she's not my mother, but she is the mother of my children. She deserves the praise and the honor today. So I say to my mother and my wife, happy Mother's Day today. But also I have a mother-in-law, and she didn't get to pick me, but her daughter did. But she definitely is a benefactor of a great son-in-law. And I could tell you some great mother-in-law jokes, but I'm not going to do that today. But I'm honoring her today too. She's a great lady, a lady of great character, and she raised her children to love Jesus. And so I say to her today too, Happy Mother's Day. And there's many mothers out there today, and I want to honor you all today. But did you hear about the 3 sons who left home and they went out on their own, and they prospered and they made a lot of money? And they get back together and they discuss the gifts that they're going to be able to give their older mother. And the first one said, you know what, I built a big house for my mom. And the second one says, you know what, I sent her a Mercedes with a driver also. And the third son smiled, and he said, I've got you both beat. He said, you remember how mom enjoyed reading the Bible? Well, she can't read very well now because her eyesight is kind of fading. And I sent her this remarkable parrot that recites the entire scriptures, the entire Bible. And the elders of the church took 12 years to teach this parrot how to do this. And he's one of a kind, and mama just has to name the chapter and the verse, and the parrot recites that chapter and verse just like that. And the brothers were like, wow. And soon after the mom got the letter from her son Milton wrote the sons back, and she said, son, I love the house that you built, but it's too huge. And I only live in one room, but I have to clean the whole house. And she wrote to Gerald, the second son. She said, son, I love to travel. I love the car. She said, but I stay home most of the time, so I rarely use the Mercedes. And the driver, he's just so rude. And then she said, dearest Donald, she wrote to the third son, not Donald Trump, but dearest Donald, you have a good sense to know what your mother likes. She said, that chicken you sent was delicious. Oh boy. Anyway, I heard about a school teacher also that gave the class second graders a lesson on what a magnet does. And the next day, the teacher asked all the students this question. My name has 6 letters. The first one is M. I pick up things. What am I? And when the test papers all came back in, the teacher was surprised to find that almost 50% of the students answered the question with the word mother. I pick up things. I'm a mother. Yes, they do pick up things after their children, and often after their husbands sometimes too, but mothers are more than just magnets picking up after everyone in the house. There are many things. And I'd like to call your attention today to several passages of scriptures. The first one is Proverbs chapter 23, verses 15 through 16. It says, my son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad. My inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. And if you look over to verse 22 through 25, it says, my son, if your heart is wise, my heart will rejoice indeed. I myself, yes, my inmost being will rejoice when your lips speak right things. Proverbs 31 is kind of going to be our key passage today, and that's the passage of the perfect mother, if you will, or the perfect Christian woman, okay? And this is what a lot of mothers are today in this Proverbs 31 chapter. And a woman who honors God is really what it's about. I got to go drink here, okay? But a woman who honors God, and that's what we want to talk about this morning. The first one is she's a hard worker. We know that all moms are hard workers, and they get up early and they stay up late. But a boy got his first job, and as he was boasting about how much money he was making, how much work he did, he said, I get up at 5 a.m. and I have breakfast. And somebody asked him, well, does anyone else get up with you? And he replied, oh yeah, my mom gets up with me and she fixes me breakfast, and then she fixes dad's breakfast too in the same way. And then they said, what about your dinner? And the boy said, oh, mom fixes dinner too. She's a real good cook. She's good at that. And they said, does your mother have an afternoon to herself? The boy said, no, mom cleans the house, and then she looks after other children, and then she gets up for supper, gets up and fixes supper for me and dad, and then when we come home, he said, we watch TV, and then we go to bed. And they said, well, what about your mother? What does she do? The boy replied, mom washes some clothes and she irons for the rest of the evening. And they said, well, did you get paid? He said, yeah, of course I get paid. Dad gets paid too. We get paid pretty good, the two of us. And what about your mother? They said, does she get paid too? He said, oh, no, she don't get paid. She don't work. That's pretty sad, isn't it? When you think about it that way, moms work really, really hard, but they don't get paid financially, but their rewards might be for how their family turns out, maybe. I don't know. But I want to honor moms today because they do work so hard. And I suggest to you that you might be a few fries short of a Happy Meal if you think that moms don't work, okay? Or maybe the elevator doesn't go all the way to the top floor, somebody said. I heard somebody else say the gates are down, the lights are flashing, but the train just isn't coming. And maybe that's your problem today. And that maybe they're depriving some village of the village idiot, is what I heard also. And maybe the wheel is spinning in the hamster cage, but the hamster's dead. However it may be, the truth is moms work very hard, and we want to honor them today. She sows in verse number 13 of chapter 31, and verses 19 and 22. She selects wool and works eager with her hands, is the passage here. Now, in verse 14, she shops. She brings food from her afar, it says. She cooks in verse 15. She provides food for her family. She gardens. She plants a vineyard. This is the Proverbs 31 woman. She works hard, and I know moms do. And our text also says that mothers in verse number 15 get up while it's dark and prepare food, and we see that often. Verse number 18, her lamp does not go out at night. If you've been a mother, you know that's true. Sometimes there's so much stuff going on, you can't get any sleep done. Verse number 27, she watches over the ways of her household and does not eat the bread of idleness. She is not lazy. That's not mom. Mom's not that way. I heard a story about Mama's mama. Mama's mama, on a winter's day, milked the cows and fed them hay, slopped the hogs and saddled the mule, and got the children off to school. She did a washing, mopped the floors, washed the windows, and did some chores, cooked a dish from home-dried fruit, pressed her husband's Sunday suit, swept the parlor, made the bed, baked a dozen loaves of bread, split some firewood and lugged it in, enough to fill the kitchen bin, cleaned the lamps and put in oil, stewed some apples she thought might spoil. She churned the butter, she baked the cake, and then exclaimed, for mercy's sake, the calves have gotten out of the pen. Has that ever happened? If you're a farmer, you know it's happened. Went out and chased him again, gathered the eggs and locked the stables, returned to the house and set the table. Cooked a supper that was delicious, and afterwards washed all the dishes, fed the cat, sprinkled the clothes, mended a basket full of those. Then opened the organ and began to play When You Come to the End of a Perfect Day. Let me just say, God bless you, mothers. You work hard. You work hard for years on end without financial gain a lot of times, but you're a hard worker. So moms work hard. And then secondly, moms communicate well, so much better than husbands do. But you don't need to say amen there. But verse number 26, she opens her mouth with wisdom, and her tongue is the law of kindness. That's what the Proverbs 31 mother is. I heard when a preacher, John Wesley, was a student at Oxford University, he was shocked by the amount of drinking done by the students. I kind of wonder how he'd feel about today, but anyway, that's another story. But after writing to his mother, Susanna Wesley, for her counsel, he received the following message back from his mom after he wrote that message to her. She said, my dear son, remember that everything which increases the authority of the body over the mind is an evil thing. That's great wisdom right there. That's great instruction. And I'm sure that Susanna Wesley said a lot of other good words of wisdom to her children because she communicated so well with them. And then thirdly, this morning, I want you to know that a good mother loves with all her heart. And we know that moms do this all the time. Verse 11 and 12, it says, her husband has full confidence in her and lacks nothing of value. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. If a husband has full or complete confidence in his wife, then you know that she is a woman that loves her man. You know the little epitaph that they write on a wife's tombstone written by her husband after 60 years of marriage? It said, she always made home happy. Moms do that a lot. She was apparently a woman who did her husband good all the days of their marriage. A grandmother was telling her granddaughter good night when the little girl said, Mommy and Daddy are entertaining some very important people downstairs. You're right, Grandma agreed. But how did you know that? She said. She said, well, just listen. little granddaughter said. Mommy's laughing at all of Daddy's jokes. That's what moms do. They laugh at Dad's corny jokes when they have company, especially. But friends, there's a lot of laughter in the home today. You just know that something good is happening in the home. And of course, there needs to be more laughter in the home more often, because laughter, I think, is of God. It's something that he wants us to do. He loves the praises of his children. He wants us to enjoy our lives. And Proverbs 17:22 says, a cheerful heart is a good medicine. Do you need some good medicine in your life today? There's a lot of laughter in the home. Someone's putting out some good medicine, and it shows a lot of love, and it's usually the mom that's doing that. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse number 5, Paul said, when I call to remembrance the genuine faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, I'm persuaded it is in you also. And the Apostle Paul indicates that God used him and his grandma in a significant way to influence but not determine the child's faith. Timothy's sincere faith came not by accident. It grew initially not through the work of the church. Timothy's sincere and genuine faith came as a direct result through a direct influence through his mother Eunice and through his grandmother Lois. Ladies, you have a lot of influence upon your children. The faith you long for in your children and your grandchildren to have, it has to start in you first, is what I want you to know as a mother. And Timothy's faith was sincere and genuine, and his faith first lived because of his mother's example. And it had origins of his mom and his grandma. They demonstrated, they lived out the life of faith, and Timothy saw it in their lives, and he picked it up. Parents, let me tell you, the church is a good role model, but it's not the church's responsibility to raise your children up in faith. And we can teach them the Word of God, but they're going to learn it at home through the parents, through the mother's faith. That's how they're going to learn it. And no, we don't have a role. We do have a role to come alongside you and help you raise your kids in godly influences, but your role is to primarily shape and mold and steer them in their pilgrimage and help them grow in their faith. So consequently, moms and dads desiring to influence and impact your kids and your grandkids in the ways of Jesus, let me ask you, what are you doing to grow their faith? What are you doing? What efforts are you having in making them the person that you long for them to become, the spiritual leader that you want them to be, the godly daughter or son that you want them to be? Do your kids see you reading the Bible? Do your grandchildren wait for you to pray whenever they visit you and they know that you're sitting down at the table you're going to eat? What songs do they hear you listening to and singing? Are they songs about praises of God? Do they encourage them to grow? Children become what they see. And Timothy's sincere faith lived in his mom and his grandma. And Timothy became the man that he was due to the godly influence of his mom and his grandma, who knew the reality that it was their opportunity to raise him in faith. And the faith Timothy had first lived in his mom and grandma. The story is told out of World War II, of the Holocaust, that took the lives of millions of Solomon Rosenberg and his family. And it's a true story. But Solomon Rosenberg and his family and his wife and their 2 sons and his daughter and father were arrested. And they were placed into a Nazi concentration camp. And it was a labor camp, and the rules were very simple. As long as you could do your work, you're permitted to live. And when you become too weak to do your work, then you're going to be exterminated. Rosenberg watched his mother and his father march off to their deaths. And he knew that they would be next would be him, his youngest son, because David had always been a frail child, and he wasn't able to do a whole lot of stuff. But every evening, Rosenberg came back to the barracks after his hours of labor, and he searched for the faces of his family members. And when he found them, he would huddle together, and they would embrace one another, and they would thank God for another day of life. One day, Rosenberg came back, and he didn't see those familiar faces. He finally found his oldest son, Joshua, in the corner, huddled by himself, and he was weeping, and he was praying. And he said, "Josh, tell me it's not true." And Josh turned and he said, "It's true, Papa. Today, David was not strong enough to do his work. And so they came to get him." But he said, "Well, where's your mother?" asked Mr. Rosenberg. "Oh, Papa," he said, When they came for David, he was afraid and he cried. And Mama said, "There's nothing to be afraid of, David." And she took his hand and she went with him. Moms, we love you. We appreciate you. We honor you today. We are who we are because of your influence in our lives. And as a pastor, I recognize and I thank each and every woman that's a part of this church that instills in their children the gospel. We know it's because of your hard work and your great communication and your love with all your heart for God that keeps this church on mission. We thank you today. We honor you today on Mother's Day. And may I say again, Happy Mother's Day, and God bless you and your family. We love you from CenterPoint Church.